Welcome to PALITICUS, the only podcast that discusses politics and public service from the Portuguese American perspective. Here we discuss everything from federal policy, local issues, and U.S.-Portugal relations with the goal of driving more discussion and awareness of the issues affecting our nation, our community, and what we as Portuguese Americans can do about it. And now, PALITICUS.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of our podcasts, PALITICUS, from the Portuguese American Leadership Council of the United States, PALITICUS, our national organization serving Portuguese Americans throughout the U.S. I'm Denise Borges, and I'm here with my co-host, the most awesome chairperson of any organization in the whole wide universe, Angela Simões. Hi, Angela. How are you?
Hi, Denise. Thanks for that most awesome introduction.
And we are so happy to have here on our podcast as our guest today, a Portuguese American from the Central Valley in California. He is a supervisor in Fresno County. His name is Buddy Mendes. Supervisor Mendes, welcome to you. Thank you for taking time to be with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me join you in this podcast.
Well, our pleasure. And if you don't mind, we always like to start these podcasts with a little bit of some biographical information for those who listen to PALITICUS. So tell us a little bit about yourself, about your introduction into politics, into the political world, and election as Fresno County Supervisor. Fresno County is one of the largest counties in California, certainly the largest in the San Joaquin Valley. And also a little bit about your Portuguese connection. What is your roots? Where are your roots, and how are you connected?
Let's start off with my roots. My dad's parents were born in Terceira. My grandfather was from a little place called Santa Barbara.
Oh, I think we're cousins.
Yeah, well, are you related to the Somos twins in Tulare?
I don't think so. But,
Okay.
it could be
Well,
somewhere
they're from
else.
Santa Barbara, too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
if you're Simões and you're from Terceira, you're probably, and you're from Santa Barbara, there's got to be a relationship somewhere, I'm sure. Huh?
Yes. It's kind of, my grandmother was from, let's call it Aveda Grande, but it's basically part of Beringa.
Mm-hmm.
And she came here about 1917, and my grandfather came in 1911. His mom had 4 boys. His dad died young. And the 2 middle boys, and he was one of the middle boys, they were raised in the orphanage there in Angra. And they could still see their mom. But that was kind of, in those days, the priest would take these boys in because that was like boot camp to be a priest.
Right.
So from 5 years old on, he was intensely educated. At 15, he was in a seminary in Lisbon already.
Wow.
And when he came here, he could speak 6 languages and read and write them. Although Latin, nobody spoke Latin unless you were going to be a priest, because the Latin Mass, the Mass was in Latin in those days.
Sure.
But he could, one of my cousins later on was going to college and told him that she was taking a course in French. And he said, "Hey, write me a letter and I'll write you one back." So she writes a letter. And about a week later, this letter comes back and she says, "God, I was so embarrassed. This letter was like at least high school level French that my grandfather had sent me. And I was embarrassed because it was very, basic French letter that I wrote him, but so apparently he could, and a lot of people, my grandfather was A.F. Mendes.
And so you were 3rd generation. So in other words, or 2nd generation born here.
Right. On my mom's side, her mother was actually born in Fresno.
Okay.
In 1907. Now, her parents were from St. George, and they were from Biscoites.
So both of your families, from your mom's side and your dad's side, are roots in the Azores, basically.
Yeah, and then my grandmother's father, he was born in Coimbra, and apparently, my grandfather came here because of the revolution in 1910, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that time, they came into the seminary, the guys that had took over the government, and they told the bishop that, hey, you can't have this deal here anymore. And the kids had a choice of either going to Italy or going home, and he chose going home.
I see.
And then his uncles were in Tulare, his mother's brothers, and they ended up sending for the mom and them. And they came to Stratford originally. But my grandfather, Pereira, he was from Coimbra, and his dad moved him to the Flush in around 1910.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
you have roots all over Portugal,
Yeah.
basically, all over the Azores and a little bit of mainland Portugal as well.
Yeah.
But you were born and raised in the Riverdale area?
In Riverdale, and then for 10 years I lived in Fremont because my dad my family had bought a chain of drive-in dairies in the 60s, and they had a creamery in Hayward. So my dad ended up having to go up there and run it. So I went to junior high and high school in Fremont. And then I moved back to Riverdale in 1975.
And when did you take an interest in getting involved in public service?
Let's see. I was always interested in politics. I've known the supervisor that sits on my chair today. I've known everybody that sat in this chair since 1975 or 76. So, I was kind of interested then, but I didn't serve on anything until in 1991. I'd got elected to the school board in Riverdale. And then I moved into town off the dairy. And as soon as I moved into town, the city fathers, we had Riverdale is an unincorporated community. And the only government they really have there it's called the utility district. Mm-hmm. The utility district did water, sewer. They had their own fire department and had a lighting district. And as soon as I moved into town, they approached me. There was a seat open in the public utility district. They wanted me to serve on it. So I started there. I did that for 18 years. I was on the school board for 21. I used to help people get elected. Some of the people I've helped when they first ran were people like Devin Nunes, who I'm still good friends. Later on, David Valadale. Always helped, help local people in elections run. So the supervisor that was Judy Case had my seat in 2014, told me she was going to retire and told me that, hey, I think you should run. And like a dummy, I said, yeah, sure. So that's how I ended up being a supervisor.
So you were elected what year?
In 2014.
Okay. And so you're on your second term now?
Yeah, I'm on my second term. Yeah.
Okay. And of course, you plan on doing a third term, I imagine?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't I'm kind of one of these people that when they get a certain age, I think sometimes you should just walk away.
Yeah.
And don't stay there, until you die.
Sure. What, when you first got on the school board and of course into what is best known as a city government, but not really an incorporated city in Riverdale, and then of course being what drove you? What was the main reason, if you recall, that drove you to actually get on the
school board at the time? We had in a lot of rural areas, they have an independent high school district and independent elementary school districts that feed into them. And I always felt that the school district needed to be a unified district. And there was a lot of problems at the high school. So my cousin Tony was on the elementary school district, and my father-in-law was too. And they said, hey, you need to get on the high school district. So again, I said, sure, and ended up doing it. And one of the things I worked at, and we got done within the first 2 years I was there, we got unification done. And it was a pretty big process because we had to have special legislation from the state to do it.
Can you explain a little bit about what unification is and how it benefits the community?
Okay, how that works is you're probably used to a school that when you start in kindergarten, you stay in the same district all the way through if you don't move through high school, correct? I'll use Fremont Unified as a good example.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yes. Are you from Fremont? I seen that in your.
Yeah, I live there. I'm not from there, but I live there about 15 years now.
Yeah. Where are you from?
Sacramento.
Sacramento.
So there were benefits to both elementary and secondary to being unified.
It's way better. You kind of have you can bring the kids through, and with the curriculum is always, and intertwined where, when they move on to the high school, you can make sure the kids are ready.
Okay. And when you ran, and of course you've been on the Fresno County Board of Supervisors now for 6 years, what are some of the main issues that you're having to deal with right now and have dealt with in your tenure as a supervisor there in Fresno County?
Okay, well, there's like various, counties are different than cities because a lot of people forget that the great welfare state, the rubber hits the road at county level because we facilitate a lot of federal and state programs. So you got that part, plus you still, have the DA, the sheriff, the auditor controller, that, all your other functions of county is still, you still have those, plus the biggest part and the biggest group of your employees actually runs the great welfare state.
So all of the so-called human resources or health and human resources are ran by the counties.
Ran by the counties.
Everywhere in California.
Right. I'll just give you an example. The biggest piece, public health, mental health, and social services run probably almost all of them. We have 7,000 employees, about 7,500. Social service department has 4,200.
So that's the biggest chunk of the employees for Fresno County.
Biggest deal.
Okay.
So, there's budget issues, that we always have to deal with. We had some problems here, which I kind of knew that got fixed, while I was here. One was our auditor controller wasn't, even though it's an elected position, we don't control it, wasn't recalculating the account balances. So our account balances were kind of, weren't really correct. And our auditor controller left midterm. We were able to go outside and appoint somebody. And that person, basically fixed everything, which was pretty good because they basically found $60 million floating around.
Wow.
So, that was probably one of the biggest things that we've got done.
What's Supervisor Mendes, what's the relationship between, for example, the supervisors, the Fresno County supervisors in this case, and the cities, like the city of Fresno and some of the other cities that are in the, is it a good working relationship? Or are there sometimes some issues that both sides, have opposite views, or is there any kind of antagonism between them? Or how do counties and city governments conciliate all this?
Okay, of that, we've got 15 cities, and I represent 9 of them. And some of the cities that I represent are Reedley, Sanger, Selma, Fowler, and then you got Kingsburg, and then clear over on the west side, Huron, Coalinga. Our relationship with 14 of the cities is pretty dang good, all through between councils, mayors, city managers. A lot of these smaller cities, the city manager really has a lot of pull through the council to get things done.
Right.
With
You're
the city of Fresno,
Mhm.
we have a good relationship with the administration. The council's kind of in flux right now. I would say our relationship with them is just kind of okay.
But
But we
usually,
have to get things
there
done
usually
with-
isn't a lot of, or there usually there usually aren't a lot of issues between county government and city governments, in your opinion.
Yeah, they do different things.
So there's no reason for there to be,
No.
any kind of issues. Yeah.
No.
One of the things we'd like to touch upon these podcasts, and of course, Angela, will have some questions as well, is right where we began when you started to mention about your biography and your roots to the Azores. Being a Fresno County supervisor, and before that being involved in the city of, in the unincorporated city of Riverdale, and of course in the school board. How does being, and in your case from both sides of your family, how does being an American of Portuguese ancestry with roots in the Azores and also in mainland Portugal and your grandfather's maternal side, how does it being an American with Portuguese roots and such interesting roots, especially from
That's a
Mendes
great
family, how does
thing.
that shape you and who you are as a public servant?
Well, that's a great thing in the Valley because, especially if you come from a big family, and I think one of the kind of jokes around here, people will ask me, well, you related to that person? A lot of times I am. It's kind of like the only other thing is in this town is if you were Armenian.
That's true in Fresno.
It's kind of
yeah.
if you're Portuguese or Armenian, that's a good thing.
And of course, the Mendes family are all over. That's true.
Yeah.
And so you feel it has helped you in your...
Well, it helped me tremendously.
Okay.
Tremendously.
And has it shaped your views?
Not too much, no.
Okay.
No.
And
I think it's just looking, at, the Portuguese community in America. The Central Valley is a little different. Most Portuguese people in the Central Valley are usually conservative Republicans. Now, if you go to the Bay Area or Massachusetts or Rhode Island, because my grandfather Pereira has cousins that are, people, his sister was in Rhode Island and had a lot of kids. Those people are usually more democratic.
do you feel that being Portuguese sometimes kind of gives you an in to talk to both sides of the field?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even here we had, Jim Costa's a Democrat. My parents knew Jim Costa's parents, so that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. And as the community gets, as there was an influx of immigration. Some of them that worked obviously for your family, dairies, throughout the years, that came from the Azores in the 1960s and all the way up until the late 70s. But that has ceased. So it's been now over 40 some years since we've had really significant amount of immigration from the Azores. And so the community
we've had
being a lot more
come
second
here
and third generation. So how do you feel the community? How do you see the community in Riverdale, Layton, and all that whole area that's been traditionally very Portuguese?
Yeah, it's changed completely.
Okay.
Changed completely.
How's that?
Well, I mean, a lot of the Portuguese people of, the next of my generation moved on. Like if I go to even Riverdale today, the Portuguese people of my generation are just a couple of the Quilos are still there, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we got Liz Mata, but Liz Mata moved from the Bay Area to come to Riverdale.
Right. She's kind of adopted the valley. And one issue also, some of the issues that you're working on right now in the county, and I know that for this area, water is always an important issue. How is that process going?
Well, pretty good. I mean, water, there's old Western saying, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. And that has never changed. I mean, even with the state, right now with they're bucking the new biological opinion. There's several suits and, back in federal court again. And there's just that's always a fight. water is actually probably, of any subject that I do, water is probably one of the ones that I probably know the most.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know if you're familiar with it's called SIGMA, the Groundwater Stabilization Act.
No, explain that to us if you don't.
Okay, that's an act that was passed in 2014, and it was basically California has always traditionally been the Wild West of the Wild West on pumping water, and that formalized where you have to start every area has to start monitoring their groundwater, and eventually by 2040 we need to come in balance. Now, when it comes to the state with groundwater, only Southern California, Riverside County, San Bernardino County, there's areas there that groundwater has been adjudicated, you know, through a long court process. And there was some Portuguese people involved, you know, that came from Artesia that went to Chino,
Mhm.
you know, that were involved in that. One of the people that, well, he's not really involved in that, but he's was very politically active in this state, was Fred Aguilar.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys ever talked to Fred.
I know the name.
Fred,
Yeah, I know his.
Fred was my Aunt Alice and Uncle Tony's nephew. He was a Machado. It was a big family. There was 11 of them. And he was first a supervisor in Chino, and then he was a state assemblyman. And then when Schwarzenegger was elected, Schwarzenegger grabbed him, and eventually he was Schwarzenegger's appointment secretary.
Right.
In fact, I went to the Azores. Fred was one of the people that went with me and Kathy. You know, because you know my cousin Kathy Gully.
Correct.
Yeah.
And one other issue that's kind of facing everybody right now is, of course, the coronavirus, the shelter in place that we've had, and everything else. And how is that affected the Fresno County, and how's the county having to deal with all that?
Okay, because the health directors are part of the county.
Correct.
So that you have the state health director, and then you got the 58 county health directors. So that pretty much has consumed a lot of our time, you know, of having to deal with a lot of that stuff. And it's just basically been a time management deal.
And how about resources?
Yeah, well, you know, luckily the federal government came with, you know, the CARES Act.
Mm-hmm.
And like we're a large county, so we actually got CARES Act money directly.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that money we can actually spend on COVID-related issues, you know, whether it be testing, trackers, you know, different things like that. Small counties like Kings County didn't get any money directly, so the state's been trying to help them out a little bit.
So only the large counties got direct funding.
Correct.
Okay.
And how has the community in general just responded down there? Because I live in the Bay Area. My mom was up here in Sacramento, and I noticed a stark difference between when I go out to the grocery store, right? If you go in Fremont, everybody's got a mask and everybody's wiping down the carts and everything like that. And you come up here and it's about 50-50. So how has the community
I think Fresno would
responded down
a lot
there?
like Sacramento.
Yeah.
Like we're already back to meeting in person. The county is.
Mm-hmm.
We never actually stopped meeting in person.
Okay, and I think our time is almost up, but I'd like to explore a couple of other topics. Angela, do you have any others?
Yeah, I was actually curious because in our conversation you mentioned how the Portuguese demographic has changed so much, and then especially with your experience on the school board, and I know that Denise, I don't know the particulars, but I know that like one of the schools in Fresno, or Tulare rather, has one of the largest Portuguese language programs in the state in terms of number of students. But I'm curious from a county perspective and the school board, did the topic of Portuguese language instruction ever come up? Was it something that the community voiced their desire for? If not, why do you think that is? And do you think it was just a matter of nobody
I'll
wanting
tell
to?
you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. Portuguese people have been one of the greatest to assimilate.
Mm-hmm.
I knew people that came, they came in the 70s, that when they got here, they couldn't speak English. But within a year, they were pretty proficient. And by the time they graduated near the top of their classes. But that's always, like my mom couldn't, even though her mom was born here, her dad didn't speak English very good.
Mm-hmm.
So she was brought up speaking Portuguese. So when she went to school, when she was 5 years old, she goes to school and realized she can't understand. But my mom, you would never know it. She never spoke with a Portuguese accent.
So it was just a matter of people not, because they wanted to assimilate so much, they never even made the request or thought that it would be important to have Portuguese in the schools.
Correct.
And do you find
we had our own experience with our parents,
mm-hmm.
and theirs, their deal was they were driven to understand English.
So do you think that's changed though in the last, let's say even 10 years, when you have generations that want to learn another language, and specifically Portuguese? Has there been anybody that has approached the school board to say, hey,
no.
Now, if that happened, what would be the process? Because I'm sure there are people out there, and the reason I'm going down this path is because I feel like people, I wish there were, but I don't know what to do and I don't know where to start. So like, what would be the process that you would recommend for your county? Someone comes to a meeting, somebody gets a petition,
Well, if they could show a need, but at the county level, that's not our deal. That's the individual school board does. Like, the city of Fresno has a problem where they've got probably 3 major languages that they have to work with, and there's probably more than 30 that they have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But when you were on the school board, Supervisor Mendes, when you were on the school board, if someone wanted something in the curriculum, whether it be Portuguese or anything else, but in this case, as Angela mentioned, Portuguese, is still one of the best ways is to be an activist. In other words, to go to the school board meetings and voice your opinion?
No, or just talk to them directly.
Okay.
That's always the best.
So
that's always the best.
The school board member is a good idea.
Yeah, okay. Go directly to them.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if, like Hillmar, Stevenson, that area, there's still a lot of Portuguese-speaking people there in that area.
Yeah, Hillmar has a great program going right now.
Yeah. Hillmar and Tulare have programs.
Well, one of my daughter-in-laws from Hillmar.
We, as we come up on at the end of our podcast, and first of all, thank you so much for spending, taking a half hour to spend with us. We always like to end it with our public officials, our elected public officials, asking them a little bit of advice to those. We have lots of young Portuguese Americans who are now in college, many of them thinking about getting involved in the political world, running for something, whether it be, as you did, for a school board, whether it be for city council, supervisor. So there's 2 parts to my question. First of all, is supervisor going to be it, or are you thinking about running for state level? Let me ask that first.
The answer is hell no.
That was a definite no.
Yeah, no.
And why not? And why not?
You could be very effective. I told somebody one time, they asked me, was here, after I got, he says, you should run for something else. You're overqualified for being a supervisor. I said, something? I like this job because I can go home every night to my family.
Sure.
I know that. And I told him, hey, look, and I mentioned a congressman. I said, hey, he's going to run. And at the time I knew the Speaker of the House. I said, if he asked me, hey, you need to run, I'd say, no, I'm going to go find somebody, because that traveling back and forth to DC would kill me.
Okay. So that's a no. The other one, as we end our time here on the Politicals podcast from PALITICUS, is a little bit of maybe of an advice. What kind of advice would you give to someone younger or even older, because you can get into politics at any age? What advice would you give to them?
You be a sponge, learn. And you can't learn a lot of this in school. You got to learn it through life. Get some life experiences. You get some life experiences, keep learning. Then one day it'll hit you. Hey, I can do that. But you need to keep learning. One of the things I've noticed, because I have 9 cities that I represent, and I like all my councilmen there. I see some that are young and needed to get more experience before they did what they did. So now they have to learn on the job.
Sure. And for those who are thinking of a statewide race, there's nothing wrong with starting at a city council. There's nothing wrong starting at a school board.
No, right? That's where you got to start somewhere. Worst things is be on a special district. There's a lot of special districts, and you can learn a lot on how the world works.
Is in your opinion also, is getting on, and especially if you're Portuguese American, trying to get involved in whether it be at local level or county, is being, for example, appointed to some of these committees, some of these commissions that exist in the city. Do you think that's also a good idea?
That's a good thing.
Like planning commissions and things like that?
Exactly. That's how you cut your teeth.
So just basically get involved in something.
Get involved.
Okay. Well, Supervisor Mendes, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Yep, thank you.
We appreciate you taking the time to be with us. We wish you best of luck, and hopefully we can chat again soon.
Okay, and maybe I'm related to Angela.
I'm sure you are.
It's yeah. We'll have an offline discovery conversation about that.
Yeah.
So, Angela, we come upon the end of another exciting Politicus podcast.
We do, and so thanks everybody out there for listening, and subscribe if you haven't already, and share the podcast with friends and family. And if you have suggestions for folks for us to interview, let us know that as well. You can email it to palcus@palcus.org, and then of course write us a review on iTunes that will help others discover the conversation and participate.
And thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
So, thank you.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Politicus, the official podcast of PALCUS, the Portuguese American Leadership Council of the United States. PALCUS is the premier national organization representing the interests of the Portuguese American community at large. To learn more about PALCUS and how to become a member or to make a donation, visit www.palcus.org. To submit feedback or suggestions about the podcast, email us at palcus@palcus.org. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests of the show are not endorsed by PALCUS. Politicus is made possible through the support of the Luso-American Development Foundation.